Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and excited to bring you guys a couple more Halloween themed card, and also excited to bring to you guys a brand new set that is part of Waffle Flowers' September release. I will have all the info on the release on my blog, which will be linked directly below the video. So to start off with, I wanted to paint a couple of backgrounds and decided to use my Distress Oxide inks. And I decided to do the backgrounds first because then I was like, oh, it'll give them time to dry while I'm coloring all the images, etc. So I pulled out some Mowed Lawn, Carved Pumpkin, Wilted Violet, and Black Soot Distress Oxide inks. And I have Distress watercolor paper here. And for the first one, I painted just kind of a narrow area, starting with the Mowed Lawn. My idea was I was going to have the cauldron sitting in that area. So, you know, kind of the idea of, you know, all the fumes and whatnot coming up from the cauldron. And then the second one, I'm just literally messing around, kind of painting a background. I was kind of curious to see what would happen if I put these colors down together pretty much at the same time. You do need to be careful with this because purple, orange, and green do not mix well. Like, you can end up very easily with a muddy mess. I tried not to really swirl them around too much. Like, I added the color and then just kind of left it, trying not to go, you know, back and forth too much. Same with this. I let the green dry for a bit, but it was still wet, but not, you know, soaking wet or anything. And then I added a bit of the purple. And then I let it dry a little bit again. And then I added a little bit more of the green, a little bit more of the purple, but tried not to, you know, kind of go back and forth because these colors just usually don't play well together and you end up with just mud is what it ends up looking like. So I just kind of lightly painted it on, purposely kind of keeping it very messy and splattered, thinking of, you know, the witch's cauldron, all that splatter and smoke and everything coming out of it. And then with this background, after it was dry, I liked how it looked, but I was like, I wonder what it would look like as a galaxy. So I painted black soot over it, which always, every time I do a galaxy, it's like you do this and it looks like a hot mess. You got to keep going though. It does look like a hot mess. Like, yeah, think you've destroyed it, but you got to finish it. So I painted the black soot pretty much completely covering all those colors, but you can still see them peeking through. And then I picked them up, those colors, while it was still wet. I picked up the purple and the orange and the green and kind of dropped those back in there just to intensify it a little bit, you know, and to bring out that color just because I love, you know, the Halloween colors. And then once I was, you know, pleased with it because I knew this would still end up looking okay in the end, I dried this with my heat tool just to speed it up. You could let this air dry, but I don't ever have time, it seems like. So I just dried this with my heat tool. And then once it's completely dry, I pulled up my trusty Copic Opaque White. You could use white acrylic paint or white gouache. I love my Copic Opaque White still. It sits on my desk. I never put it away. So I used that. I watered down a tiny little bit just to get it a nice consistency. And then I heavily splattered this over this background. And that's it's amazing what the white splatter just completely changes the look of it. So now it looks more like, you know, a galaxy or a crazy, weird sort of night sky. And then I set that aside to dry. And while that is drying, I now have some Copic friendly cardstock, which is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock here. And I just put it in my stamp platform. And then I am going to ink up pretty much all the images from this little Hocus Pocus stamp set. And I'm going to ink these up with Gina K's Amalgam Black ink, which is a Copic friendly ink. So stamp all these images. I'm going to stamp them twice because it's a brand new stamp set. I ended up stamping it actually 2 panels with it because I thought while I have all these stamps lined up, I've done 2 backgrounds, I might as well have a ton of images. So I'm going to do kind of doubles of everything. So I stamped these onto that white cardstock, and then I pulled out my Copic markers and got to coloring. And this time I remembered to add the colors here on screen. Like I mentioned in my last video though, I do try and list always the colors I used on my blog. If I do forget when I'm editing, sometimes I get so caught up with the editing and all that I totally forget to add the actual colors like as I'm using them. But I did a fun little kind of green combo for her skin, just for something fun. And then I used purples for her hair and the little like smoke tendrils that are going to come up from the cauldron and whatnot. And then for her hat and her dress, I am coloring them. The idea is color them black. This is something that I used to struggle with when I first started using Copic markers. I used to struggle so much, and I would avoid usually trying to color anything that needed to be colored black. And until I started figuring out that you don't color them with black. I never use my black Copic marker almost ever. I can't remember the last time I pulled out my black Copic marker. When things are needing to be black, I always usually go with my cool gray markers, and I just use a very dark one, which is C9 here. And then I just blend them out to a lighter gray. So that gives things more depth and dimension, because if you were to color it all just, with the black marker, it's going to be very flat and very dull and very boring. So you'll lose all the detail. Like if it's an image with detail or anything like that, you'll just lose all of that detail. So using cool grays is the way to go, and it takes practice. I've had a lot of people asking about that too, or leaving comments about that. I've been coloring with my Copics I don't consider myself even close to an expert. There's some artists out there that their Copic coloring skills are phenomenal. Sandy Alnock being one of them. Like, I'm just in awe of the effects you can really achieve if you want to put the time and practice and effort into it. But me, I'm comfortable with, I'm happy with where I'm at, but I've also been doing it for over a decade. Been coloring for a long time, and I could be further along if I put, like I said, that time and that effort into it. I do it because I enjoy it. I like where I'm at, and I like to jump around and, between different coloring mediums a lot. So right now, again, I'm on another Copic coloring phase, but I'll probably jump right back into doing like watercolor again, or this, that, and the other thing. So to each their own, but you got to start somewhere, and you improve with time and practice. So anywho, I did all my coloring on the little cauldron there. I colored the green, and then I added a bit of the purple, those two same purples, to the contents on the inside. I just kind of dabbed the markers right on there just to add that little bit of purple, because of that background I had painted with the oxides with the green and purple. I thought that'd be kind of cute. So I did that. The cats, I added a couple of the yellow markers to their eyes. I thought that would just be a cute little touch. The cats in this set, I don't know what it is about them, but I just got a giggle out of them. They just look hilarious. And I love how those ones out of all of them stamped solid. The rest you can color in, but the cats they are black cats. They are staying that way. So unless you wanted to stamp them in a different color of ink, but I just thought they were really cute like this. So after I was done all of my coloring, I took my Jelly Roll 10 gel pen and just went along and added highlights wherever I thought highlights needed to be, and little dots here and there just to give it a little bit of extra texture. And then I pulled out the coordinating wafer dies here, and I had already trimmed all the dies apart. They all come connected, and I've shown, I did a video, gosh, that was years ago now, just using the little jewelry snips to snip all my dies apart. And I generally do that like as soon as I get any sort of coordinating die set. So all of these dies I taped into place, and there's quite a few of them, so I've taped them all into place. I ran this panel through my die cut machine and die cut everything. And like I said, I had stamped and colored another panel. And normally what I do is I take all those dies and tape them into place again. But because I had stamped that panel with my stamp platform, everything was lined up. I was like, why don't I just line up this panel that I popped all the die cuts out of? The dies are already taped into place, so just line this up on top of the other one and then run it through. So that's what I did. Saved me a ton of time. Everything's die cut again, and I didn't have to really think about it too much. So popped all of those little coordinating die cuts out of place, so now I have doubles of everything. And I also off camera stamped there's that little double star stamp, stamped that multiple times again, and actually colored and die cut those, because for the Galaxy card I thought it'd be cute to have more stars in the background. So after I've got everything colored and die cut, I can now start assembling my cards. So I'm going to stamp a couple sentiments from the Hocus Pocus set onto some black cardstock. And I used my anti-static powder tool first, and then I'm inking up the stamps with Ink on 3's Juicy Clear Embossing ink. And then I'm using Simon Says Stamps Detail White Embossing Powder, and then melting that with my heat tool. So I'm going to, one's going to be kind of a Halloween themed birthday card. Again, I'm loving that. I did that in previous Halloween video. One was like more Halloween themed and the other one was Halloween / birthday. So just a cute little extra, you know, it gets kind of more out of stamps, and so you don't have to do just Halloween. You can also do, you know, when people's birthdays fall in or around Halloween. I think it's cute. So this one with the little watercolor cluster, splatter, whatever you want to call it, background that I did, I adhered the sentiment along the bottom, and then I pulled out my MFT black and white stripes pattern paper. And I've said this before, I save every little bit of that pattern paper, every little strip, which was perfect because I had this tiny little strip that was just perfect to put along the top of the pattern paper. So I just adhered that into place, and then all these images to create my scene, I popped up some with little 3D foam squares. Some are popped up, and then some I adhered flat to the card to kind of create my scene. So I've got my little cauldron right, you know, superimposed over the steam, smoke, whatever you want to call it, that I created with the Distress Oxide inks. And then I've got my little witch, and I'm going to adhere the spoon just kind of propped up against the cauldron. Got the little cat there. I adhered that one next to the spoon, and the other one I thought would be kind of cute. He's like, you know, playing with the sentiment because that's what cats would do. So stuck him along the bottom, and then started kind of adhering the little like smoke tendril stamp, and then all these little ingredients as if she's, you know, tossing them into the cauldron. I was having so much fun putting these cards together. These little images I think are absolutely adorable, and it's just so cute. So cute. Loved it. So just, you know, going along and creating my little scene and adding all these little elements, it was fun. It made my day to make these cards. So got everything kind of adhered the way I wanted it for the card front. And then my card base is heavyweight white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. So it'll be an A2 top folding card. And I stamped more sentiments from the Hocus Pocus set onto the inside of the card. And then my remaining little elements from my first panel of stamps and die cuts here, I'm just going to, you know, finish stamping and adhering to the inside of this card to create just the remainder of this little scene. So, you know, stamp the little spider and adhere the spider web, and then I stamped the little stars. There's a little solid star stamp in the set, so I stamped those with those same Distress Oxide inks that I used to paint the front of the card. And then I'm going to adhere my, you know, finished card front panel to my card base, and that's going to finish off the first card. And then for the second card, pretty much the same idea, except I just kind of switched up the sentiment. And then this one, I just trimmed off the one side of this watercolor panel, because for whatever was going through my head when I created that galaxy background, it was more off to the side. So I trimmed off a little bit of that, and then I added another strip of this black and white stripe pattern paper. So I'm going to adhere the paper directly to my card base first. And then the galaxy background piece, I'm going to adhere with Simon's Big Mama foam tape that's thinner than the standard foam tape. One, because so it only pops it up a little bit. And two, I wanted to use the foam tape to help kind of flatten this piece because I had used a fair bit of water on it. So it was warped a little bit. So I'm going to adhere that into place. And then I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I'm not going to pop up any of these images with foam tape. I'm just going to adhere them all right to the background. So I've got all those little extra stars that I had stamped and colored and cut out. And then I'm going to create my little scene. I had stamped and die cut the Happy Halloween sentiment from the set onto another strip of black cardstock. Cut off the little edge of that into a little flag end, and then adhered that with my adhesive. And then same thing, I'm going to start adhering all of the little elements. So I'm going to adhere my little witch. I thought it'd be cute. She'd be balancing on the sentiment. And again, tossing those ingredients into the little cauldron here. So she'll be tossing in more ingredients. I'm going to have the stars kind of adhered randomly in the background. I thought it'd be really cute to have that cat, you know, flying in the background on the broom. So again, just having fun sort of creating another little scene here. So I've got my little arc of ingredients, and then I'm going to start adhering little stars. There's this little moon, the little broom, and the random just cat just, you know, just sitting there. He's just sitting on that broom. He owns that broom. So got all of that adhered, trimmed off that black cardstock that was hanging off the edge of the sentiment. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the inside of the card, but I'm going to use different sentiments and different little elements that I had left over. So I'm going to I ink up some of the sentiments with the black ink and then some with the Distress Oxide inks, just again to mix it up. So I love that there's, you know, the options with this set too to kind of build different sentiments. So on the inside it says we go together like Hocus and Pocus. So stamped my little spider, added a little web, and then found all the random little pieces that I had colored and die cut, and of course I had to adhere all of them because I don't want any of them to go to waste. So I adhered all of them. I have another the other cat there, so I had him kind of like running along the spoon, making a mess, and another little moon and some stars, and I'm going to stamp those little solid stars just to finish it all off, and that is going to finish off these cards for today. So, as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list, links to all the supplies. I'll have links to the entire Waffle Flower release because there's a whole bunch of really good stamps. I'm really loving their stamps. They're so cute, and some of them are so unique, so much fun. But of course, I had to use the Halloween ones right off the get-go for this release because they're the cutest little things ever. Love. So, check out my blog post if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.